Hello, this is PubShorts episode 26, titled Paperback Retractor. My name is Dr. KK. I'm the Innovation Officer at Enago and Trinka, and I have with me Tony. Tony, hi.
Hi, I'm Tony O'Rourke. I'm VP for Partnerships here at Enago, and I look after the commercialization of our AI products. Um, Welcome to PubShorts. I hope this isn't the first time you have attended, but if you have, this is a regular podcast that KKO and I do to talk about aspects of technology and how it's impacting on the scholarly communication industry.
Yeah, and to add to it, we are streaming live usually on YouTube and LinkedIn, but you can also watch it on demand later. And if you're watching it on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell notification icon. And if you
Yeah,
find our content interesting, please share it with your friends and colleagues.
yeah,
And if you have thoughts, if you want us, Tony and I, to talk about something interesting, including songs by Beatles, which I'll segue to right away. So if you have any requests, maybe you can send us those, and we will try to cover those. So,
yes.
Tony, we
I
are
was
talking
to ask why is this episode called Paperback Retractor?
uh,
KK.
because there's a famous song by the Beatles, "Paperback Writer,"
Chris?
and
Yep.
we are talking about a paper that, or rather, a preprint that talks about an archive of retracted paper. So we have to
Okay.
talk about the retractions a
I
lot.
understand now.
And Tony, is Paperback Writer one of your favorite songs?
Oh, the Beatles written so many fantastic songs, and that's just one of many.
All right. So, unfortunately, we are not talking about Beatles anymore because we are talking about publishing and academia. So, the first story is a career news item from Nature. Accessibility worsens for blind and low vision readers of
Yeah,
academic PDFs. So, okay, you seem to have thoughts on this. Shall I
well,
read?
I'm so surprised and kind of saddened to see this because so much work has been happening in the background, as part of diversity inclusion programs by publishers to improve accessibility. I'm just thinking one particular publisher that I work with who's investing huge sums of money in things like alt text programs
Mhm.
to make images more accessible. So it surprises and saddens me to see this headline.
And why Tony is surprised is because this article talks about all text. So this study finds that many PDFs in the current day and age are not accessible to blind and low vision readers. So only about 3% of papers analyzed in this study met all accessibility criteria. Rapid publishing trends are partly to blame for this decline, and the COVID-19 pandemic accelerated the need for quick publishing. Most PDFs fall or are lacking in providing alternative text, which is what we abbreviate as alt text, for figures and proper headers for tables. So, Tony, could you explain why alt text is important from the context of, let's say, a blind reader?
Yeah, very simply, it provides a description of an image. So sometimes you go into Google now, you'll see, or other browsers, you'll see a piece of text that will appear under an image
Yeah.
that gives a description that makes the image accessible for the visually impaired user.
Right. And if suppose you want to sort of interact with computers like how blind individuals have to, you can simply ask a computer to read out whatever there's on your
Oh,
screen.
absolutely. Yeah, that's one part. It's not so much an issue with the text. It's an issue with the sort of the ancillary information, tables,
Right.
images,
Uh,
photographs,
right.
and how because this is an important part of the article as the article itself.
Yeah. So what I was leading to, Tony, is that if suppose you ask your computer to read out a web page, and if you make sense out of it, in the sense what you're seeing is what the computer is reading out to you, then it's good. But most papers are not like that, is what this is saying, because it is not going
Yeah,
to make sense.
yeah,
So the issue affects a smaller group, often of smaller group of readers, often overlooked due to lack of influence. In the sense, people always have to figure out, where to put their money in, and it's a lot of, I guess, resources or investment or costs of funds to generate all text and to get everything right. And that's when, Tony, artificial intelligence can help, can't it? So do you
of
think
course.
what kind of technological innovation could help in this, you think?
Um, Anything that's any AI that's able to use uh, tool that can detect image, computer vision type tools that will assess and analyze images and produce useful summaries.
Mm. And all these newer models are becoming better and better at reading images and finding useful descriptions. If somebody is interested, you can even try to send, or rather upload, a regular image that you find on the internet into ChatGPT and ask it to read it out and see what it says, and you will then understand why it is important for us to have all
Yeah, but
text.
it's as I said at the beginning of this paper, it saddens me to read the headline because I know how much work
Yeah.
is going on, how much the trade associations like STM and some of the big global publishers are putting into making content much more accessible, like alt text generation. I think the challenge is there are so many journals,
Hmm.
and many of those journals haven't got the many of the publishers, the smaller publishers, society publishers, just don't have the funding to be able to invest in services like this. So
Right.
we have to find ways. The industry has to find ways of making it more accessible.
And we are rightly segueing into the next article or a story or a research paper that we're talking about. This is from osf.io. The preprint is titled, "Does it feel like a scientific paper? A qualitative analysis of preprint services moderation and quality assurance process." Again, we are talking about funding, because preprint servers, as you know, are the servers where papers, the first version of papers before peer review are published, and they need some sort of quality assurance process. So we are talking about what they are. So it is obviously published in Meta Archive, which I think Tony, you and I have talked about. It is metadata related, and preprints are scholarly papers. I just explained. I don't need to read that out. The study involved in interviews with 14 preprint server personnel. Findings show varied moderation processes tailored to specific server needs. Moderation aims to prevent misinformation and maintain trust. So, Tony, I'm going to ask you, why should different preprint servers need different quality assurance processes?
Uh, I think they do. I think preprint service, regardless of subject area, regardless of domain, should all have the same kind of qualitative control measures in place. And I know, reading this paper, you know, in 12 months' time, I'm sure the situation is going to be different again because many of these preprint servers are looking at
Mm-hmm.
ways to make sure that the content is going through the same kind of rigorous processes as a peer review paper might.
Right.
In fact, I know firsthand some of these preprint services actually have more rigorous processes in place than some journals, which is interesting.
Right. So the thing that I wanted to highlight is that if everybody knows that preprints shot into sort of fame and to the limelight during the COVID pandemic, and COVID obviously is a medical condition, right? So medical preprints needed a certain set of different checks. For example, the informed consent statement. You, Tony, you could
Yeah,
relate to
yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
So
Right.
those things are only applicable for, let's say, medical papers, whereas maybe data availability or maybe code availability statements would apply for engineering and computer science papers, for example. So there are different requirements, and so different servers have different sort of checklists and everything. So what
Yeah,
we are talking about is that there are similarities between peer review, but they are different. And trust cues like author format or author affiliation may introduce biases in if suppose they are not provided properly. And the implications of diversity and the future of preprint servers are discussed in this paper. Now, Tony, a simple question. Again, we just talked about all text and artificial intelligence helping in it. How can technology and artificial intelligence help preprint servers for screening purposes?
oh, in the same way that it helps journal publishers in terms of creating um, tools which the preprint servers, the kind of the checkers, can can use when they receive a paper. A paper is uploaded to a preprint server. That paper should still go through the same academic rigor to
Mm.
make sure it's not being plagiarized, to make sure it's legitimate science, to make sure the authors are who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of, and then there are many checks that AI can help the preprint server producer. I always said publisher; they're not publishers. The preprint server producer implement to make sure that the paper is rigorously checked before it carries on.
Great. So I'm moving on to the next one. This is also interesting. So we've talked about the alt text for a reader. We are talking about screening, which you can equate it to, let's say, editorial checks. But now we are talking about peer review and structured peer review. This is an article, I think, published, or I think a resource published by European Science Editing. It is titled "Structured Peer Review Implementation and Checklist Development." I will open the actual paper itself while I read through some of my notes. So it is a checklist is obviously published by ESE as a viewpoint, and it aims to address issues related to inter-reviewer discrepancies as well as intra-reviewer discrepancies. So, Tony, if for somebody who has never thought of inter and intra-reviewer discrepancies, how would you describe it?
Oh gosh, in inter-reviewer discrepancies are disagreements between reviewers of an existing paper. Intra, I'm not sure. Is it around the broader community as a whole? I'm
No,
not
no.
sure how to describe
No,
it.
intra reviewer is, let's say, to assume that, Tony, you are a reviewer. You are answering a question, and then in another question which is related to it, you are giving a different answer. So
Right.
you're not internally consistent within your own review. So the idea behind a
Oh, I
checklist,
see. So
yeah,
inter within your, yeah, okay, consistency with yourself, and then consistency among
yeah,
reviewers. Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So this focus, I mean, as you might know, as in checklists helped bringing consistency
Yeah.
across even within an individual's repetition of performance. And another way you can look at intra reviewer would be that for the same, let's say, research or similar research, you do similar answers and responses across different papers. So anyway, that's there. So this checklist focused on key manuscript sections in the IMRAD format, which is a classical research paper format, and it encourages reviewers to provide constructive feedback. So I'll pause there, and this provides you with an original, the one that was there, or the existing version. There are several versions of the structured peer review checkpoints. If you want to research, I'm aware of at least three. One of this is the third one. I'm aware of Elsevier and something else I cannot remember, but these are questions that a reviewer is supposed to read through while they read the paper and answer the questions accordingly, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
they're basically, as giving a grade to the paper to
Yeah.
make sure that it is acceptable for publication in a journal.
Yeah.
Now, what they're proposing is a slightly different one, and I think I'm going to read the rest of my notes, but this is how it looks like. So the focus on revising is to improve reviewer comments and publication recommendations, and to address obviously intra and inter reviewer discrepancies. Now my thought is this: so if AI, Tony, is very good at parsing information and deconstructing complex, let's say, textual information, how can AI help in conducting peer review, at least assist peer reviewers in getting
I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head when you described it as structured peer review. A structured peer review toolkit. What AI is very good at
Mhm.
is, absorbing a structure, absorbing content that relating to that structure, and ensuring that any content that's being checked against that information, those rules, are adhering to those fields.
Excellent. So I think that I think we've already talked about it. I gave you a question to sort of explain it to a new listener or a viewer, but at least I am very sort of excited about the possibilities of artificial intelligence and technology helping peer reviewers, because I feel that that's one thing that
Yeah,
will enable robustness of science and eventually science being implemented in policies, because there'll be more trust in science, and trust is very important in science. So
and
I
and KK, as you know, we Enago won an award last year for a product that we're developing, which will be coming out later on this year. That will do exactly that. That will support the peer reviewer in providing structured peer reviews.
Excellent. Thank you, Tony, for that segue. We are excited about the product. And if you are more interested, you can find more about whatever we are working on by visiting enago.com's /publishers, and you'll understand how we are working with different publishers to bring in technology and innovation to improve their workflows. All right, Tony. So moving on to a story that we have covered in different sort of slices. This is titled Changes to eLife's Indexing Status in Web of Science and Scopus. So this is in sort of as a response to what has happened in the past. So I'll just quickly read. eLife is making changes on how their research is indexed. eLife will provide a partial feed to the Web of Science core collection. eLife is moving from the Scopus Journals collection to the Scopus preprints collection. This ensures better discoverability of their research. So, Tony, for those who are not quite aware of what has happened to eLife and its indexing, could you summarize it?
Not easily, no, but it was. I know Web of Science last year withdrew eLife or certain eLife journals from its category, from its indexing
Mm-hmm.
for things that which it considered inconsistent with standard practice within the industry.
Yes, yes, you're right. I mean, it's basically the quality assurance processes were not in line with what Web of Science wanted, which is in one way right, but at the same time, it inconveniences researchers who've already published in eLife.
And also I think what it also highlighted there's that perhaps there's more than there's more than one flavor coffee. There are no, what's the expression? There's more than one way to skin a cat. I think is a bad expression in English. You know, eLife is a reputable publisher. It's producing reputable journals. It has a slightly different business model than other journals, and I think the is slow to catch up with that.
Right. For if you're a researcher who's already published in eLife, so this is what you need. Most eLife papers will still be indexed, but not all. eLife's publishing model would not change, and authors who value eLife's model for its openness and transparency can still, submit papers to it. And eLife hopes to continue to grow with many submissions and positive feedback. So overall, I think this is sort of like a nice bow to the end of the eLife story, because it was de-indexed, and now at least they are making some changes so that.
I wonder, is this the end? I think we'll see more. I think we'll see some further changes.
Right.
Perhaps at eLife itself, maybe the way it's categorized.
Right, right. All right. So I'm going to switch to the story or the paper that we titled the episode on. This is, with Draw Archive, which is a large scale data set for retraction study. So as you can see, it is a preprint published in Archive, and I'm going to read out the summary. So it introduces Withdraw Archive, a large data set for studying retractions in scientific papers. It's the first of its kind for computer science and STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. The dataset includes over 14,000 withdrawn papers from Archive, and the authors provide a detailed taxonomy of retraction reasons, identifying 10 categories. They achieve a high accuracy in automatic categorization of for these reasons. The dataset also includes scripts for full text PDF analysis, aiding various research applications. So this is the abstract. I'll switch to the story. So your thoughts so far? I mean, what do you think about this entire thing?
We've spoken about retraction so many times. I think one of the great things about the technology that's has been developed is how much easier and how much quicker it is now to identify paper. I think in our last episode we talked about the fact it took 4.5 years to identify to retract a paper on COVID. Mm-hmm. So the easier it can be to understand, what the elements of a retracted paper are, and to identify those elements, and then to retract that paper, then I think the better for it is for the.
Right. So I want to quickly navigate to the paper's what is it? Fourth section, which says evaluation of a zero shot categorization. So zero shot would be when you use obviously a large language model to categorize things into, let's say, whatever, like good or bad, without giving it any examples. So this is a zero shot way to categorize the papers, and the researchers in this paper were able to show high levels of accuracy, which is great. I mean, zero shot is your ideal, but the good news is that if suppose the accuracy, let's say, is 95% for a number, if you want to improve it, then maybe you can give it a few shot, which is a few examples of what is a retraction reason, if suppose you were to a human were to label it. And so the key insights reveal that the most retractions are due to critical errors or incomplete work, which is unfortunately which is the case. AI and quantum physics are the top fields with retraction, at least in this data set, and authors identified, as I mentioned, 10 categories for retraction, such as errors or policy violations. Now, this data set, Tony, helps in study retraction reasons in the STEM fields, but it does not currently address biomedical field related retractions, and you and I have talked about it. Almost every sort of such research comes from computer science. Yeah. So
and let's not forget humanities and social sciences as well, where there will also be retractions.
Right. So I'm hoping that this will just start the process of having similar data sets for retractions in biomedical fields and, as you said, arts and humanities. But this is a great start. I would love to know. I mean, I would love to get a deep understanding of what makes a paper retraction worthy, so that we can then corresponding, I mean, like in turn we can educate our clients and authors as to how they can prevent their papers being,
Good idea
yeah.
for a webinar.
Yeah, we'll work on, hopefully. Now, this is these are the main papers or the articles that we wanted to cover. The next, there are three quick hits. The first one is ACS Publications releases 2024 Diversity Data Report. So what I want to say is that it highlights a significant progress in diversity, including gender representation in editorial roles and growing participation from early career researchers and international contributors. Now, I want to hand this over to you. So ACS is a leader in these fields. Do you agree, Tony?
Oh, ACS is doing a huge amount in diversity and inclusion,
Yeah.
in terms of programs to encourage more publishing from authors from around the world, from different communities. No, it's doing a great deal.
Yeah, and the notable shifts would be more representation from East Asia and South Asia, as well as from emerging scientific communities. So ACS is
There's no,
doing a
it's not just geographic. It's gender based. It's
yes,
you know, yeah. There are lots of different categories.
right.
You know, which they're committed to helping to develop.
Right, so I'm very happy to see this. We need more equity, diversity, and inclusivity all across the board, I would say.
Yeah.
Now, a quick story on it's titled "Over 100 German Universities Partner with MDPI in a New National Agreement." I just want to say that this is one of several such transformative, I suppose, agreements that are coming into play. But Tony, this is I just wanted to sort of get your insight on how, let's say, how can you compare it to the Indian government's one nation, one subscription policy? Is it comparable, or what do you think?
It's the German government, whether it's through ZB Med or through other national consortia, Project Deal, I think it's called,
Mm-hmm.
have been negotiating transformative agreements for some time now. You know, what the Indian government done with the One Nation, One Subscription deal is to do many in one go.
Mm-hmm.
The NDPI is one of a number of publishers that the German government, through their various consortium bodies, have negotiated with. So it's in the same direction, but at a much smaller scale than the One Nation, One Subscription deal in India.
Right, right. And finally, the last thing, and this I think we'll spend a little time on, like a few minutes on. So this is a very fascinating article. It is
You love
titled.
your science fiction.
Yes, it's not just because it's science fiction, it's future history, which is a concept I love. So it is an editorial published in Learning, Media and Technology, volume 49, 2024. It is titled Near Future Academic Publishing, a Speculative Social Science Fiction Experiment. So before we talk about it, Tony, I think we talked about it in the previous episode as well. Science fiction is brilliant minds exploring what could happen so that we can prevent bad things from happening and good things from happening. That's
Yeah,
a
exactly. Yeah.
So from this point of view, I love this. So this it's a speculative look at the future of academic publishing. The article imagines changes by 2030 and 2035. So if you go through it, I think these are the sections. So I'm just quickly going to summarize. By 2030, the article speculates that AI disrupts academic publishing through technical challenges, introducing automated systems for manuscript processing while creating new inequalities and ethical dilemmas in peer review. So a pause for a moment. Do you think 2030 this will happen? Is the timeline right, or something needs to be changed in your
Hang on, let
opinion?
me just see if I can find my crystal ball. I'm there somewhere.
Show us your
Um,
crystal ball.
you know, it goes without saying that the rate of change over the last 5 to 10 years has been so much faster than over the previous 300 years. So, and there is a lot changing in terms of the use of AI within publishing. Whether 2030 is the right dates, or whether there's kind of some kind of deflection point from there, or whether it's later, we already see those changes happening.
Right, right.
So I think this is an interesting view in terms of what 2030, what 25 might look like.
Right. In 2035, the article speculates, the authors speculate, that academic publishing transforms towards open access and collaborative models, prioritizing community building, intellectual commons, interesting, and transparent research metrics beyond traditional impact factors. Which I think, so if I were to be asked this question, I feel that the 2035 sort of speculation could be achieved faster and 2030 might be the more correct one, in my opinion. And finally, the article, obviously, this is, I mean, I would say this is, let's say, a bleak picture, because there are things that will go wrong, as always. Would there would be in a good science fiction novel, but it concludes with a hopeful view of collaborative and transparent publishing. So when I read this, Tony, I immediately, what I was sort of, my mind linked this article to two novels that I've recently read, and I
Oh yeah,
have I have these open here. So this is, I want you to read this. The second novel is a little more a little drier, so maybe not. So this is Last and First Men, by Olive Stapledon, if I'm not mistaken. So I couldn't believe when I read this that this novel was written in 1930. It is mind blowing. I think there are about 18, 17 generations of men, as they call it. And it has these chapters where each, let's say, if the civilization, or whatever, provides its what it has gone through and where it has reached and everything. So this article reminded me of this. I just found out that there's a TV show or something, or a movie or something as well. So you can see that it's probably there somewhere here. But the other one, which I think you might have actually heard about, is the Mars trilogy by Kim Stanley Robinson.
yeah. I've heard of that.
So this will come up, especially in the context of science, and maybe in the context of Elon Musk and terraforming Mars and everything. This is a very realistic, very hard science fiction, factual account of what could happen if humanity were to move to Mars and eventually terraform it, or whatever the right
Yeah,
word for it.
yeah.
So this is not quite future history, but the other one is. But both are in the time frames that you can imagine. The first one is like a millennia of a spanning time frame, but at least this is, you can relate to it. So my question to you, Tony, are you reading something related to it? What are you reading these days?
I'm certainly not reading. I love future history. I'm not reading any future history at the moment, although I'm reading a book by somebody who's written kind of alternative histories.
Mm.
So my current book is Precipice by Robert Harris, which is a look at the build up to World War One in terms of some of the communication, some of the things that were happening in the background, which maybe helps explain from his perspective, why certain things happened during World War One.
Right, right. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our episode. So, I mean, I'm sure that people who are watching this would like some of the books that I would love to know what our readers are, or sorry, what our listeners are reading, not our readers are listening. Uh, and and if you have any recommendations, or maybe Tony, you and I could probably do a book review as well, something related to science and publishing, maybe,
Possibility,
in the future.
possibility. I'd have to read it.
Obviously, we'll have to read it. We cannot let an AI simply read it and
No, no,
So,
no, no, no.
we'll have to read it. So, if somebody is interested in knowing more about PubShorts or Inago or Trinka or Tony or KK, how can they find?
You can get hold of KK or I via LinkedIn. You can find PubShots over at LinkedIn and on YouTube. And please press that like button on YouTube if you see the videos.
Yeah.
Or you can contact me at tonyo@enago.com, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts and suggestions for future episodes of PubShots. And thank you for those of you who've already sent ideas through.
Right. And because we just talked about science fiction books and reading, if suppose you are interested in knowing what we are reading, maybe are you on Goodreads, Tony?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so you can find me on Goodreads. I think that's the only sort of social media platform that I update, apart from obviously LinkedIn, because I keep a track of what books I'm reading, what I need to read, and everything. So if suppose you want to find more about what I'm reading, and you can please take a look at it. And any other plans for the rest of the week, or anything that you want to talk about?
This week is a very AI heavy week for me, so I have a number of things, a number of new opportunities which I'm exploring.
That sounds promising. I mean, exciting, and maybe even a little bit, intimidating. I would even.
That's intimidating is what I go for.
All right, all right. And so until the next time, when Tony and I will talk about the latest developments in academia and publishing and AI, this is Dr. KK signing off on behalf of Tony and the wonderful team that supports us in bringing such content to you. This is PopShots episode 26, Paperback Retractor. We will see you in the next one. Bye, Tony.
Bye.